Welcome to Show Culture Some Love, a podcast brought to you by the Creative and Leisure Industries Committee of the TUC, or CLIC, as we like to be known. It's a bit less of a mouthful. London East and South East regional version of CLIC. There's lots of us all over the country. And I'm Tim. Tonight I'm talking to Ayvianna Snow, who is...
I'm the co-secretary of
Co-secretary.
CLIC, I know, and I'm also the chair of Equity's London North branch. I have about approximately 6,000 members in that branch, so it's everybody who lives in London north of the Thames, which, as you can imagine,
Wow.
is quite a lot of members. We have, because a lot of actors and directors tend to migrate toward London, so it's one of the busiest branches. So I've got my hands full with all of my members. But thank you for talking to me today.
Talking about CLIC, really, and what we do there. I'm a BEC2 delegate, and CLIC comprises 8 unions. We're made up of 8 unions, aren't we? The Artists Union England, Equity, of which you're a delegate, BEC2, of which I'm a delegate. We've also got PCS, NUJ, MU, of course, UCU, which is the University and College Union, and the Writers Guild of Great Britain. So we're a multiple union committee on the TUC that looks at anything that may affect the arts and culture sector, and we try to help and make a difference with that.
Yeah, I think what we found at the TUC was that the unions that cover the creative sector of the workforce, we often encounter a lot of the same issues in terms of people expecting us to work for free, people not paying you, jobs being given out through networks and through recommendations through friends, rather than being advertised openly and publicly. A lot of short-term contracts or 0 hours contracts. And the general sort of lack of respect, I think, in general, that there is for people working in the arts. I think the arts are seen as a soft option, as not a real job. When are you going to get a real job? So the TUC, I think, realized that because we have all these common problems, like musicians and actors and writers and painters, we all face the same issues, that we should band together to try to communally see if we can address some of these issues that we're all facing. So that's what me and you and other members of the committee have been attempting to do.
Absolutely, and I was just totting up the membership of all the unions that we've got within the 8 unions that comprise CLIC. This is nationally. We're looking at nearly 500,000 employees or workers. A lot of those may be freelance workers who are union members, like myself, like yourself, I imagine. But that's 500,000 people nationally that are deeply affected by a lot of issues that we try to bring to the fore. I mean, currently we're getting behind campaigns like the Arts and Minds campaign. I mean, can you tell us a bit more about that?
So Arts and Minds is focusing on the fact that there is fewer and fewer arts subjects being taught in schools, and there's less and less investment and money going into the arts in schools. And it's increasingly becoming the preserve of very rich people who can afford to send their kids to private schools. And I want to bring in here the a Class Act report, which came out through the Sutton Trust last year, I believe. Professor Dave O'Brien and some other professors put this together, just to give you a sense of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So they found that 26% of the general workforce has a degree, but that rises to 69% of people working in the creative sector. So you can see immediately the importance of having a degree if you hope to work professionally. So that raises issues of who has access to tertiary education and the importance of having that access. Now, another very important point that I want to make here is the UK average, right, in terms of the people who went to private, independent, fee-paying school is 7%. So only 7% of the UK populace went to a fee-paying school.
So 7% of the entire population
yeah.
went to a fee-paying school.
That's right. So if life were fair and we were all on an even keel, you would expect to see that 7% figure represented across all the professions fairly evenly.
Yeah.
But when they looked at it, they found 35% of BAFTA-nominated actors went to a fee-paying school.
Over a third.
43% of working classical musicians went to a private school.
Okay.
32% of people studying music at Oxbridge went to a fee-paying school.
Mm.
43% of students at the Royal College of Music went to a fee-paying school.
Mm.
So you can see that it's not in line with this 7%. So because the average state schools are not offering arts subjects, there is this increasing focus on STEM subjects, always STEM, 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 and arts are pushed out, less and less arts. It means that the only students that are getting any exposure to the arts are kids that get to go to private school. And this, you don't get an adult who works in the creative sector unless you had a child that was exposed to the arts when they were young. You don't wake up when you're 30 and you can suddenly, oh, I can play the violin. No, you had to have that when you were a child.
Mm.
So we have to get the importance of these children being exposed to arts when they are young. And I want to also say here that recently, last year in fact, the National Theatre of Great Britain 100% cut their primary school touring program. So they used to have a program whereby they would take a play out and show it in primary schools to kids, maybe an abridged version that's more appropriate for children. Like one of my branch members, Adam Clifford, was in Hamlet, which went out to local primary schools, and they've stopped doing that. And for some kids, that was their only exposure to
Exactly.
a play at the National Theatre.
I mean, when I was a kid, or when I was a young man in Mansfield, in a mining town in Nottinghamshire, yeah, we had the RSC touring to our local leisure centre. We got to see, a bit of Shakespeare. I had a little Grotowski theatre company rock up in our old library in Mansfield. And I went there to see a show there that just blew my mind. It was that kind of grassroots outreach opportunities for young kids in less
Less
advantaged
affluent, yeah.
areas that got that opportunity, and they're disappearing. And that is, and we had a fantastic arts department at our school, and I'm talking obviously 40 plus years ago.
But I think the thing is that because West End ticket prices now are getting so out of hand, you know, you can pay £100 now nearly to go and see a play in the West End, and these prices are not accessible for an ordinary family. So for some kids where their parents cannot afford those prices in the West End, those National Theatre tours into their schools were the only exposure they had. That was the only chance they had. And now if that's gone as well, then we will end up in, you know, I worry for the generation coming after me that we will end up with the only adults that have had any exposure to the arts are those from private schools, which means that it will then be a workforce of people that went to private school. So it won't be reflective or representative of the actual real UK populace.
No.
And we need to see our real people with real experiences reflected on our screens and on our stages.
So Arts and Minds, that's a National Education Union initiative that we as Click have got behind, and keep it at the forefront of the agenda, because at the end of the day we need to be educating, giving children exposure to the arts, giving them a chance to pick up a pencil and play, to be creative, because it's that creativity that fuels advancement in every field, whatever it is. That kind of thinking, the ability to think outside the box, just think differently, think creatively, all of those things come out of the arts. And arts education is fundamentally important. So what is Arts and Minds doing about that? What's the thrust of the campaign that we're getting behind?
We have various ideas and policies and things we are pursuing. So we recently went to Westminster, we went to Portcullis House in order to lobby some MPs. We would like to encourage the government to put a bit more money into the arts and to get the arts back on the curriculum and make it a core subject, the same as maths and science and English. It shouldn't be seen as a lesser a sort of poor relation of maths and science. It's equally as important.
It should be STEAM, not STEM.
Precisely. I mean, obviously, you can make the argument for the humanities and arts are important for learning to be a human being. But even if you just want to reduce it to brass tacks, the arts is a big, big earner for this country.
Absolutely.
The arts is the third biggest in terms of generating income in London after retail and banking. After that, it's the arts. So we do pay for ourselves. If you put money into the arts, we make money for the country. So it is actually a profitable thing.
If you just want hard facts and figures, then the cultural sector is bringing a lot into the country.
For every £1 you put into the arts, it generates £4 for the economy.
There you go. And that's, exactly why we should be trying to bring that into education. And this is just one of the things that we get behind to help boost awareness of those campaigns, to help actively take a part in making those campaigns effect change. And that kind of change is what it's about. I'm thinking, in an industry where the majority of people who work in those industries are freelance or sole traders and working for themselves on what are effectively quite often 0-hours contracts. I mean, it was interesting there's been a lot of furore of 0-hours contracts, and so they should continue to be. But in effect, a lot of the work that we do, maybe as performers or as technicians within the industry, are often quite narrowly defined contracts. You get paid for the hours of work you do and no more. You have to manage yourself and negotiate your own career without often feeling the support of a union, which is why I think, why I'm part of a union and always will be. I think the importance of unions, especially in an industry where the majority of workers are self-employed, freelance, is really important, because it's good to have someone who's got your back.
Absolutely. And I think our members, particularly, I want our members to feel that they can come to their union and that there is someone on their side, because this can be a very lonely profession. And as you say, there is the expectation that you will do an awful lot of unpaid work or a lot of work outside. You might only be paid for the hours you're on set, but in reality, there's a lot of unpaid hours around that. You might have had to film a self-tape audition, which took several hours. You might have to learn lines that took several hours. If you work in costume, you might have spent hours sourcing materials, or, so there's an awful lot of there's a lot of unpaid work. There's also a lot of scope to be taken advantage of. When I first started acting, you really only have negotiating power if you're a name. If you're a named actor, if I were Judi Dench or somebody, then you can sort of insist upon conditions. If you're just nobody and no one's ever heard of you, you don't have much negotiating power to insist upon anything. And that creates an environment where actors or dancers or models or writers, you're very much ripe to be taken advantage of. You can find yourself, I often found myself having to ward off sexual advances from directors, photographers, producers. That happens to an awful lot of girls. Or
Not just girls, no, but
boys as well,
but
absolutely.
I take your point completely, yeah.
Or just doing a lot of work that you shouldn't have to do, like turning up at all hours of the morning, providing your own costume. When I first started out, I took jobs. I worked for free for a while, or I did jobs where it was sort of travel expenses and a sandwich and things where they were really taking the piss, really. But again, that culture of unpaid internships, which is very prevalent throughout the creative sector, no matter what kind of creative job you're trying to get, even if you're trying to work in fashion or music, that culture that they can ask you to work for free. And because there are so many people wanting to act and we are desperate, or we're seen as desperate, that they can get away with these kinds of things, because what am I going to do? Who am I going to tell? And I would hope the answer to that is, well, you can tell your union.
And together we're stronger.
Yeah.
It's not as necessary as it used to be, because it did used to be closed shop equity. I remember, having to work hard to get my contracts to get into equity.
I actually miss the closed shop, if I'm honest. And I think people don't realise that having the closed shop actually, it worked for actors, because it meant that we could then insist upon certain standards. You had to be paid a certain amount of money, so you could only work so many hours, and then you needed a break, and you could have your working conditions and your rates of pay. And because since we've lost the closed shop, and now literally anybody can call themselves an actor, and people do. And people go on these entirely unregulated websites like Mandy.com, and can put themselves forward for acting jobs. And because they have no background, no wider context, no sense of what's a real, what they should expect, what's a professional standard rate, they do end up taking a job for 50 quid and a sandwich, and that undercuts what the union's trying to do. So actually, I very much miss the closed shop. And it's also something I want to say about Spotlight. When Spotlight was taken over by Casting Systems, I think it's called, it's an American company, back in 2020, I think, one of the first things they did was they reduced the joining criteria. So it used to be the case that you had to have, I believe it was 5 speaking credits in order to get on Spotlight, or you had to have a degree from a recognised accredited drama school. I went to drama school, so that's how I got in. But they were quite strict and quite stringent about it, and people used to complain, and people used to say, oh, it's not accessible. But people don't realise those stringent rules were actually helping us, because it meant that everyone who got on had reached a professional standard. But nowadays, they've reduced the criteria. So nowadays you can get on with either 1 year of training, or even 2 years of part-time training is enough. Or I think it's now down to only 1 speaking credit. Or, get this, you can get in with a recommendation. So if an agent in the PMA recommends you, you can get in with 0 training and 0 credits.
Right.
So what that has done is it has meant that basically anyone now can get on Spotlight and can be on there calling themselves an actor, applying for jobs. And you might think that, oh, that's great, it's so much more accessible. So much badness is ushered in under this word accessible. Because what it has done is it's meant that there's now, it has eroded the standard of people on Spotlight. And what it means is that, so a job that used to go out to 30 agents now goes out to 3 agents. Because casting directors are trying to avoid being swamped by thousands of completely unsuitable applicants. So actually, it's not more accessible, it's less accessible. Right. Because the net has simply tightened even more at the top, and they just move the goalposts a bit. There's now 90,000 people on Spotlight in the UK.
Wow.
And it's, in my opinion, purely money driven, because the more people they can get on the books, the more fees they get in every month. So there's no longer any commitment to making sure these people are genuinely real actors, or that they're genuinely having a chance of getting work. There's 90,000 people, you have no real chance of getting a job, really. You're just paying a monthly fee into their pockets.
90,000. And then, of those 90,000 people, only 50,000 of them are equity members.
Yes, it's about 48,000, I think, in the union currently, which means there's 40,000 there with no union affiliation and no idea.
But for those people who want to be actors, maybe haven't had the opportunity for formal training because of the kind of cuts that we're looking at, the lack of exposure, the lack of ability to actually get on courses.
Sure.
But who still feel a burning desire to be an actor.
Sure.
What of those 40, what would you say to those actors who are out there unionless? What can equity offer them in terms of
we can offer you a lot if you would join. And what you find is that The people that have not joined tend to be not working much. We have actually quite a high union density in most workplaces.
Right.
So there's 90% of the National Theatre actors employed in the National Theatre are members of Equity. That's very, very high to have 90% in the workplace. So most of that 40,000 are not really booking jobs much. That so it's come to us and join, and then we can teach you what to do and what rates you should actually be getting, and how to actually apply for jobs in a way where you might get it.
Yeah.
Um,
And has the ability, and because it's always been a battle. I was an actor for many years back in the 20th century. It's always been a battle to get work. It's always been a battle to know what you're worth as
yeah.
well as an actor. And jobs come your way. You're desperate to work. You take a job, and it might be a profit share or something like that. You're not getting that kind of protection. But what is it? Is it that more and more people are having to undercut themselves and each other in order to get work, or is there a better proportion of people who are actually getting the right type of contract, the right type of protection for their work within Equity now? Yeah, I'm just looking at what Equity is actually doing for the actors.
Well, I think we're in at the moment we're in the middle of negotiations with Pact, so we're establishing our new Equity Pact agreement, which hopefully will have clauses around AI. That's a very big thing the members are worried about. So we're going to try and make that a clause that you can't scan someone's image and have own their replica forever without paying them or without consent. And at Equity, we actually do have clauses. If members write to us and say, I've been offered this contract, we can send you the correct wording, legal wording. You can put our clause in your contract, and then you can have that added in so that when you go to sign something with your employer, you have that reassurance that you won't be scanned and they won't own your AI image and they can't use it, they can't sell it on to be used by another company. So we offer protections like that. And also residuals is a big issue. It used to be the case that you would get paid, say you made a TV show and then it was sold to another country, you would get a payment every time it was screened somewhere else. But with the prevalence now of people sort of filming things and putting it up on Instagram or TikTok, these platforms are global. So it's an immediate, if I upload a video of myself to TikTok, it's now available in every country in the world forever. And there needs to be protections around that. Residuals have to grow and change with the growing, changing world that we live in. So that's also something we're looking at. But yeah, if people want to join the union, then they can be subject to these contracts which have better clauses and better protections.
So thinking more about what we can do then for performers, given that you're Equity through and through.
Dyed in the wool.
Yeah, you are. Dyed in the wool Equity. What kind of things can we do to help performers other than the spotlight issue, for example?
So one of the campaigns we have is we're asking drama schools to scrap audition fees. So if you want to audition at a drama school, you can pay anything up to 60 quid just to be in the room for 10 minutes and do your piece, and you're paying for their time to bother looking at you. And if you're auditioning, the year I auditioned, I travelled around, I think, 10 schools. So you can see how this adds up. Added to that, I want to say, I came from Northern Ireland many years ago. There is no drama school in Northern Ireland.
Wow.
Which means if you are Northern Irish and you want to go to a professionally accredited school so that you'll come out with the industry standard qualification, you have to leave. You have to go across the water to the mainland, which means that we have additional costs. I had to find the money for either a plane or a ferry, sometimes a hotel room. If it's a audition that starts at 8 a.m. or something, you have to come the night before. Most drama schools require 2 auditions at least. So the first one and then the recall, which could be a couple of weeks later, which means you're paying now for the whole expedition twice. So it's very, very difficult for our students to find all that cash. I was 17 years old, And so, yeah, that can be a huge, huge barrier for kids trying to get into school. So we're encouraging schools, and Central, I think, has already done it to scrap the fees.
Oh, good for them.
If someone wants to also pay travel costs, that would make me very happy. But we also looked at potentially adding class to the protected characteristics under the Equality Act of 2010, which is a piece of legislation. If you ever face discrimination in the workplace or in hiring practices or whatever, that's the piece of legislation that you point to. So the Equality Act says that you can't discriminate based on race, based on sex, based on marital status, things like this. But class is not mentioned in there. And perhaps it should be, because people that are coming from a lower income background that haven't had the advantages, maybe that also should be something that's considered.
Yeah. I mean, there's a brilliant film called Class Act,
Yes.
which you can look out for, which is basically a really interesting piece of film about exactly that.
Yeah, it used to be the case if you go back 50 years, we had people coming through like Julie Walters or Maxine Peake who did come from that lower socioeconomic background, but it's kind of drying up, I think, nowadays. And nowadays, most of the younger stars are quite posh because that's the only people that can afford to do it nowadays.
We're getting back to the time when anybody working class was played by someone from RADA.
Who's doing an accent?
Yeah. Oh, it's awful for us, isn't it? Yeah, it is. We're going to get to that state of affairs again.
It can be kind of insulting, actually. I sometimes hear English people doing Northern Irish accents and want to die in a hole. But also, when you're applying, for instance, to Arts Council England or other funding bodies, that could be a condition of receiving funding. For instance, can you show that you have, I don't know, 25% of your team has come from a working class background? 25% of your team is made up of people of color or women or something. These are things that could be brought in to encourage companies that receive funding to be more diverse and broader in who they're working with. And especially companies, if you can privately fund your own company, then fair enough. But if you're seeking state funding from the government, then I think it should be a requirement that you've got a representative group of people in your company.
So you're thinking that things have got to such a point that we need positive discrimination or carrots at least for funded bodies.
I think so. I think it's come to that. I'm also, with my other hat on, I'm the vice chair of Unity Theatre Trust, and we are a funding body, and we have people that write to us wanting to fund various kinds of arts projects, people putting on plays, shows, musical things. And one of our criteria that we have is that you have to show that your project is of value in some way to the local community. So if you're doing a play, maybe it's about women or something, then we would expect that you would also run maybe a series of workshops for local women. We also fund youth theatres, and we encourage, you have to show that you've got so many sort of local kids from state schools that want to come and that they're learning about theatre. So yeah, I think absolutely. And when I'm looking at the applications, I always look to see, okay, I can see that's a great play, blah, blah, but where is the community focus? Well, can I see local people being helped in some way through this project? Because, they're asking me for money.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, you've got your hands on the purse strings and make sure they go to the right money goes to the right people, which is cool. So what other issues are actors facing that equity can help with?
There's, first of all, the decline in soap operas. So we've recently lost River City in Scotland and also Doctors. And those jobs were great access points to people starting out in the industry. I know a lot of people that got their first job on Doctors, for instance. And they were great kind of bread and butter jobs for the average ordinary actor who's not a big star. And the more that we lose those kind of ordinary jobs for actors,
The opportunities for the jobbing actors, yeah.
yeah, precisely. That's a big issue. I would say also like there's a lot of kind of there's a whole cottage industry that springs up to take advantage of actors, and there are people making money from actors. So you see these pay to play type workshops where you pay 60 quid and you go in and you have an hour with a casting director.
Hmm.
And people are paying for the opportunity to meet, I don't know, the guy that casts Downton Abbey in the hope that maybe I'll get a job. And in reality, the chance you're just throwing money into their pockets and they have no intention of casting anyone. So it's very hard to get into the drama school. Then once you're in and you graduate, there's no kind of bridge between for graduates to actually find employment. And a lot of people are thrust into just nothingness. You graduate and then you're just lost for a few years.
If not forever.
Yeah, no, I'm still lost,
Yeah.
And it's very, very hard for the average person who hasn't got a whole load of money behind them to make it work.
Hmm. Yeah. No, it's a tough old life.
I'm depressed.
And no, and it's not. It is, and I mean, it's difficult. It's always a difficult one because it is ultimately your choice when you head into that field. No one's, forced into
That's true.
into the world of acting.
No one made me do it.
No one makes you do it, and so it's a difficult line to tread. But nonetheless, it doesn't mean that you have to lose respect for yourself and lose respect for your rights as an employee or your rights as a human being because you are treading this,
But
this
also
slippery path.
the system favors the rich. So if you were very wealthy, you probably can afford to just spend 2 or 3 years unemployed doing scratch nights while you build a portfolio.
Yep.
But someone who doesn't have that background can't.
No, a very tricky state of affairs, and it is obviously getting worse and worse. As you said, with those rather depressing statistics there. All those people out there who want to get into music, who want to get into acting or writing, performing in some way, into the arts in general, everybody has got to have a fair crack at the whip. And in my thinking, really, when we're talking about what the unions can do, when you're out there on your own, walking the path less trodden and on the rocky road, then having someone who has got your back and an organisation that can look after your needs is a great help.
Yeah, and so if you are having issues, if someone hasn't paid you or not honoring your contract, you can write to the union and we'll chase them for you. And we have our legal team that can give advice. And also we've just started doing pay what you can workshops at my branch. So if members want to have a workshop with a casting director or director or something, work on a bit of Meisner or Shakespeare or whatever, you don't necessarily have to pay more than you can afford. So that was something I was very happy that we brought that in just to try and make it fair. Life isn't fair,
no.
but as fair as it
But
is
that's
ever going to be.
that's a great initiative. And if if there was someone watching or listening to this that wanted to, look into joining equity, what do? You go to the website?
You go to the website, we're trying to make it as easy as possible for people to join. We want you to join.
Great. Well, hope they do. Brilliant. Well, great talking to you, Ayvianna. We'll be talking again about other things, no doubt. But yeah, thanks a million.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye, everyone. The opinions expressed in this podcast are personal and do not necessarily reflect the official policies of the TUC or any of its affiliated unions. Thanks for listening.